Good evening, my name is Isabella Newt. Before I get started, I just wanted to add a little disclaimer. I am getting over a little bit of a sickness, so I do apologize if my coughing or trying to clear my throat is a little bit distracting. I'm very sorry for that. So the lesson that I will be teaching tonight is an 8th grade health class where we will be looking at nutrition. So a little bit of a background before this lesson. This will be opening up the nutrition unit for my students. But the week prior, we will have talked about what nutrition looks like in the body and what a nutritious body looks like. But now we're going to look at what nutrition looks like in the food we consume and what a healthy diet looks like. So the standards that we will have been looking at for this lesson are 6 to 8.5.2, which is compile and assess available information to enhance health, and then 6 to 8.5.6, which is assume responsibility for personal health decisions. And the objective for today is, after using MyPlate, the website, to find specific nutrition information, students will be able to research and assess information on the 5 main food groups to assume responsibility for their personal healthy eating decisions. So this lesson was supposed to involve students using technology that helps keep them involved. So what I would have had my students use for this lesson is pull out their Chromebooks and do some personal individual research, and I'll get into that later in the lesson when we get to that. As well with that, some things that you need for this, students need to have their Chromebook, a pencil or a pen, and then the paper that I hand out to them. And then teacher only needs access to the MyPlate website and then a projector that you can put the PowerPoint on. So every student has one of these, which is just a choose your own plate for MyPlate. So we've got the 5 main food groups, and I'll reference back to this during the lesson. So to start off, good morning, students. Today what we will be doing is we will be doing some individual research looking at MyPlate and what a nutritious body looks like for us. So I'll let you guys know what the objective is. Our objective today: after using MyPlate to find specific nutrition information, you all will be able to research and assess information on the 5 main food groups to assume your own responsibility for your personal healthy eating decisions. So, sounds pretty simple. And who doesn't love to do some fun research? Do any of you remember what was once called the food pyramid? Does anybody remember the food pyramid? Well, the food pyramid was created by the U.S. Department of Agriculture in 1992. And it was a visual representation of the prime amount of food servings and food types a person should be eating daily. So, this is what the food pyramid looked like. Can everybody get a look at that? So, you've got your grains down here. So, we've got a lot of bread. I see rice in there. Up here, we've got vegetables in this area. A little section over here for fruits, milk and alternatives, which would just be dairy. And then meat, fish, egg, and alternatives over here, so a lot of protein. And then way up there is fat, oil, salt, and sugar. So that's what the food pyramid was, which was the ideal healthy diet that people would reference back to when they were trying to create their own healthy diet. And again, this was 1992, so maybe this isn't typical of now in 2025. But do you see any potential problems with this? Would you have any assumptions about food or what you should focus on eating just from looking at this visual? I want you guys to turn and talk to your neighbor. Pause. Students will then turn and talk to their neighbor about what they might find are potential problems. And then I would bring it back. I would say, all right, let's hear from a couple of our friends about any thoughts they had on the food pyramid. Then we would all discuss our answers and reasonings to the prompted question. And then I come back. All right, so this model actually brought out some criticism for not sufficiently addressing the quality of food that was within each category in the food pyramid. And this could have led to an overconsumption of certain kinds of food like carbohydrates, which you guys already talked about when we did our discussion, that there's this huge portion down here that's all carbs compared to the rest of the food groups up here, where just from looking at this, if I didn't know any better, I'd say, man, I need to consume a lot of carbs. I should be really having so much bread and rice and all carb just from looking at that. So that criticism, along with others, led the U.S. Department of Agriculture to rebrand the food pyramid into what is now known as MyPlate. So do you guys see how it's more rounded of a diet? So we've got fruits up here, grains, vegetables, protein, and then dairy in a little cup over there, like a little cup of milk or chocolate milk. So having it as a MyPlate makes it give off the impression that it's a more rounded diet that we should have, which is the diet that we should have. Our diet should be very, very well rounded. MyPlate gives people a visual representation of the amount of food that one should intake each day. And it does this by visualizing it on an actual plate. It gives people a more balanced view of the food groups and aligns better with current nutritional guidelines. The handout you have is what it looks like from the myplate.gov website. So this is the handout that's in front of them, straight from the MyPlate website. Now, on to our goal for today. We are going to research MyPlate and find out some more about nutritional guidelines and daily eating amounts. We will do this by utilizing the MyPlate website to find specific nutrition information. During this class, you will be able to research and assess information on the 5 main food groups to assume responsibility for your personal eating decisions. Now, my favorite thing about MyPlate is that it is entirely customizable and it encourages you to specialize your own meals into your liking. So we are gonna look at our MyPlate now. So I want you all to pull out your Chromebooks and open up Canvas. And we're gonna go to the PowerPoint that's titled MyPlate Lesson. You're gonna open the PowerPoint and scroll down to the page that I'm on right here where it says research with all the different foods on there. You're gonna click the link for each of the 5 main food groups one at a time and do some digging into the specific food groups. So you're going to do your own little research on the types of food. So this should be fun for all of us. When you're researching, I want you to pay close attention on the website to how much you need daily, nutrients and health benefits, why the food is important, and the tip sheet. You will use this information to make your own MyPlate. So while you're researching on your Chromebooks, I want you guys to actually be writing down answers on your MyPlate sheet with your pencil and your paper in front of you. So if you're going through the MyPlate sheet and you're like, ooh, for fruits, you know, I really like apples or I really like bananas. I could see myself having apples or bananas like almost every day. Then write that down. And do that for each of the food groups. Write down some things that you see that you're like, oh, I really like that, or that sounds really good. I want to try some of that. All right, and this is straight from the MyPlate website. And I want you guys to think about this while you're going through your research. It says, the benefits of healthy eating add up over time. Bite by bite. Small changes matter. Your nutrition matters. Not only right now as you're in 8th grade and we're 14 or 15, but even as you get older. A nutritious diet is one that reflects on a healthy lifestyle. So we need to really be careful of what we're eating and making sure we're getting enough food from each of the food groups, like this. So, pause. What students will do now is they will research on here, and I would have done this in class, but I'll actually click one of these. So I would have had my students in class for the micro teaching go over grains. So I would have specifically told them that they don't need to do all 5 of them. For this micro lesson, they would just need to go over and research grains. So they would go through and they would pull up the grain site, and you scroll down and it talks about what grains means, how grains have 2 subcategories, how many grains do you need, nutrients and health benefits, tip sheet, grains quiz, all of this information down here. There it shows you how much you need depending on your gender and how old you are. There's an ounce equivalent of grains table where it pretty much lays out all grains that you could eat and consume. So you got oatmeal, pancakes, pasta, all of that. And then here's some facts about grains. Health benefits. Yeah, so for the micro teaching lesson, if we had met in person, I would have had them spend about maybe 5 minutes researching on that and discussing that, writing it down on their sheet. Then I would have brought everybody back together. For the micro teaching lesson, I would have had each person give me an example, one example of a grain that they found that they could see themselves using in their diet. For my actual lesson, if I had taught this in a class, I would have had everybody have a time of research. I wrote down that it'd be 30 minutes. So 30 minutes for the 5 different ones that I have up there. So for fruits, vegetables, grains, dairy, and protein. And then we would have all come together. I would have had them give me examples of each of them. And then we go through on the PowerPoint. I talk about some main points that were on each of the food groups. So for the micro teaching lesson, I would have gotten to grains and we would have talked about it. I would have said something that is important when we're learning about grains and thinking about grains in our diet is we need to focus on half whole. So half of the grains that we consume need to be whole grains, not refined grains. As we learned, there are 2 groups of grains, whole grains and refined grains. The daily equivalent for your guys' age group in 8th grade is 6 to 8 ounces equivalent for girls, and then 6 to 10 ounce equivalent for boys. Now, maybe you guys didn't notice this when you were researching, so I want to highlight this. When you're looking at grains and where to get your grains, especially in bread, avoid the E word. Does anybody know what the E word is? And then they would tell me enriched. So avoid breads especially, but any foods that say enriched grains. Because what does enriched mean? It doesn't mean it's better for you. It means that they're adding more things to it. And when we're looking at grains, we don't need anything to be added to it. We need whole grains. Not anything added to it, not enriched, just whole grains. I'll highlight how many Americans are off balance with their grains because we get too many refined grains than whole grains in our diet. And grains are an excellent source of carbs. So if you're looking to carb load as athletes, I know me as a swimmer, it's important for me to carb load before a swim meet because I use a lot of carbohydrates when I swim. And then right there at the bottom, examples, that's where I would have an example of a grain from each of my students. I go through that with protein, dairy, and then we get to the end where we show each other what our examples of our own MyPlate were. So everybody will have taken notes at this point, and we will be showing each other what we had, giving out some answers, doing a little discussion time. And then for the closing, we'll do a little quiz, nothing too hard. But our quiz would have been over grains. For an actual class, I probably wouldn't have done all 5 of these quizzes. I would have just picked whichever one I felt like we might have been the weakest in when we were discussing. And you start the quiz, it's about 8 to 10 questions depending on which one you decide to do. And I'll have all of my students go through that individually. And then if we have time, we'll go through and do another quiz together as a class because it gives you the answers as soon as you submit. But yeah, that's the lesson that I chose to do. Thank you so much.